I'm Moon Knight, you lunatic. Anyway, got me shrooms. Sorry, I know I had to open the video with at least one Moon Knight meme quote. But yeah, as that little opener gave it away alongside the title of this video, I'm going to be covering the first season of Moon Knight, which recently just had its season or potentially series finale aired this past Wednesday. Also, I highly recommend that you check out this book as it served as one of the major inspirations for the show. This is the Moon Knight by Lemire and Smallwood collection. I mean, look at these stills and screenshots. I mean, come on. You can't not look at this and think this looks awesome. But yeah. So, to the few unaware of who Moon Knight is, allow me to explain. Moon Knight was a character that was created around I believe the mid to late 1970s, and debuted in Werewolf by Night number 32. The origin of Moon Knight is that he is a man by the name of Mark Spector, who previously served as a mercenary. However, due to the fact that he was left for dead during a mission by one of his employers, he would have remained that way. However, Mark was saved by the Egyptian god of the moon known as Khonshu, who, in exchange for saving Spector, would have to have indentured servitude to Khonshu, serving as his fist of justice. Spector agreed, and thus he became the Moon Knight. But it's a bit more complicated than that because Mark is not a very easy man. As the show highlights, Mark has dissociative identity disorder, which basically means that he has multiple personalities inside of his head. And the two that are the main focus of the first season of Moon Knight are, of course, Mark Spector, and Stephen Grant, who was changed from the comics from being a billionaire playboy reminiscent of Batman to a British, mild-mannered gift shop employee. But, yeah. So, Moon Knight has always been one of those Marvel characters that I felt was very underrated and I thought had some serious potential to make it in the big screen or whatever. And color me surprised when it was announced in 2019 that Moon Knight was going to be getting a television series on Disney+. And color me even more surprised when in late 2020, it was officially announced that Oscar Isaac was playing Moon Knight. Like, that was a choice that I was not expecting at all. But it works so well, as I'll get into in a bit. But yeah, and the fact that it released on March 30th was even cooler because I found that it was really cool that they opened up the month of March with a Batman movie and they closed out March with the debut of the Moon Knight. Oh, and then also the Halo TV series debuted during that year, but who cares? But yeah. So, obviously I want to mention this real quick. I really dug Moon Knight. I think that it's probably the best out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows that have released since like WandaVision and whatnot started back in early 2021. And I think the fact that what makes it work so well is a couple of reasons. One is its story feels like it's almost completely separate from the MCU. Yes, it is set in the MCU. It is set in present day 2025. However, they don't make any overt references to any previous Marvel events. They don't make any previous references to any characters or anything like that. It's very much like the Marvel Netflix series in the fact that they basically tell their own story while still being a part of this larger universe, if that makes sense. And I really appreciate that because not everything needs to have some greater connection to something else. Like, not every Marvel show or every Marvel movie has to connect to another previous event. It could just tell its own standalone story. And I think Moon Knight succeeds really well. Now, obviously, I don't think it's the best ever Marvel live-action show. That still has to go to Daredevil. However, I do believe the fact that Moon Knight is definitely up there as the second best, and I do believe the fact that it's the best overall since Disney has started making these Marvel Disney Plus shows. And I think a lot of that comes down to a couple of elements. As previously mentioned, the standalone narrative of it was really cool. 2, really love the fact that the tone of it is very much like a psychological thriller. Like, we open on Stephen Grant as just this mild-mannered gift shop employee who casts these blackouts of another life, and you're wondering, wait, what the heck is happening? Is any of this real? Like, is this just all in his head? Or is he just going insane? Like, what is this? What's happening? Obviously, of course, that is a bit, if you have read the comics and are familiar with the character of Mark Spector / Moon Knight, you are kind of aware about what's going on. But for a newcomer who doesn't know anything about Moon Knight, I could totally see them being intrigued, kind of like, you know, a mix between Fight Club and Indiana Jones, because there's a huge amount of Egyptian iconography, and it really captures Egypt to a it really does a great job capturing Egypt, is what I'm trying to say. And the mythology as well, from Khonshu to, I'm forgetting what's the name of the crocodile lady, Ammit, yeah. And obviously, of course, you know, there are those details about, you know, like, oh, this is actually this. And they actually portray Egypt as a modern-day city and not whatever we've been portraying Egypt as for, like, the past couple of years now. So there's that. Another really great thing that I love about the show is, of course, the performances from everybody around are solid. Oscar Isaac is phenomenal in the lead role of Mark Spector / Moon Knight. Like, he delivers so much to this character. Well, technically characters, because he has to play two separate characters. He has to play the mild-mannered British Stephen Grant, while also playing the really standoffish and jerk Mark Spector. And obviously, of course, you know, that is him fighting in both the Moon Knight and Mr. Knight suits, for the most part, I believe. Obviously, of course, there probably were some stunt guys that did put on those suits for the more dangerous of stunts. But you know, it is really cool seeing Oscar Isaac really getting to explore his acting range and deliver a really incredible performance. I honestly, like, you know, he really sold me as the character of as Moon Knight. Like, he's really great in this role. Not only that, but Ethan Hawke is very interesting as Arthur Harrow. Now, even though Arthur Harrow was a character that previously existed in the comics, they basically rebuilt him from the ground up, because Moon Knight is a much more lesser-known character. If you are to change some things around of his backstory, who, like, a main antagonist would be and whatnot, the general audience isn't going to care. I mean, sure, obviously the big diehard Moon Knight fans might complain, but you have to keep in mind, this is all in the purpose of telling the story that the show wants to tell. Obviously, there are some references to Moon Knight's previous past, like Crawley is the golden statue, who is who's an informant for Mark Spector. Duchamp, who is actually a guy named Frenchie, who does help out Mark Spector as well. So obviously that confirms that he's still out and about too. But overall, while we do get nods to the greater Moon Knight mythos, if that makes sense, it is very much like, you know, we are focusing on this story here of Stephen and Mark. And obviously, of course, you know, Ethan Hawke is great in the leading antagonist role, playing this very optimistic cult leader, trying to basically bring back Ammit so she can judge humanity. However, that also includes judging innocents who probably haven't even done. It's very much like a Minority Report situation. You know, that movie with Tom Cruise? Yeah, it's very much like that. And then obviously, of course, the actress who played Layla, Mark's wife, she was also great too. And I really love the fact that, you know, Marvel is really beginning to take this greater push for representation. Like, this is the first time we've really seen, like, an actual Egyptian superhero, from what I can recall, in mainstream media like this. So that's really, really cool. F. Murray Abraham was great as the voice of Khonshu. He's really able to capture the snootiness and the almost childish nature of Khonshu, because in the comics, Khonshu is a bit of a jerk, and the relationship that him and Mark Spector share is not a good one, and they do capture that really well in the show. Because it's obvious the fact that, you know, Khonshu is like, I gotta deal with this guy again, because I don't want to deal with him. Fine, just kill him already. But, you know, the dynamic, of course, between Mark and Steven and Mark, just the character dynamics between everybody are really solid and really great. The action sequences are really solid. Obviously, the standout moment to me, in terms of really great action, was the moment at the end of the first episode when you see Mark first transform into Moon Knight and take out that jackal. And then, obviously, of course, you know, there's the bit towards the end where you see him basically fighting off against Harrow, and it's really great stuff. And the Moon Knight costume looks great. Obviously, of course, you know, it is very different from the Moon Knight costume from the comics, in the sense that, you know, it doesn't have the traditional, like, blacks in the costume or whatever. but in a very much looking like a mummified version of the costume, which I think makes sense considering its Egyptian origins. So it does make sense. But another thing that I also want to mention really quick too is this is probably the most violent Marvel will ever get. Like Doctor Strange, which you will see a video on that soon. I still have yet to see it, but you will see a video on that soon. Like this is probably the most violent that Marvel Studios is willing to go. Obviously, of course, you know, it's not going to be on par with something like Daredevil, where you're going to see, like, Kingpin, like, literally decapitate a guy by bashing him against with a car door or anything like that. But for what it is, for a PG-13 rating, they are able to get away with a surprising amount of violence. And I gotta respect them for, you know, because Moon Knight is not a like, he is a much more violent character, and due to his nature, he is a bit more psychotic, if that makes sense. But that doesn't mean the fact that I dug everything about the show. Even though it is 6 episodes, it does feel like that in some areas I wish they could have expanded upon some key areas more, or maybe they could have dialed back on a couple of other elements. Like, for example, so light spoilers for the end of episode 4. After something ends up happening between a confrontation between Spectre and Harrow, Mark wakes up in a mental institution. And you're like, which is very much how the Jeff Lemire run begins, as you see Mark Spector in a mental institution. And I really wish the fact that maybe we could have just gotten an entire episode dedicated to just wondering, was this actually just all in Mark's head? Like, have the moment where he wakes up in the insane asylum be the ending of the episode, and then all of episode 5 is just him in the asylum trying to figure out, you know, what's going on. Is he crazy or not? But, you know, obviously, of course, they established, no, this is very much real, as you see him go and find Steven in a separate sarcophagus and other things like that. And then episode 5 is basically just filling in Mark's backstory, showcasing, you know, why he is the way he is and whatnot. Which I do understand, and it is really, really great stuff all around, but, you know, I really wish that maybe they could have played with that element more. And it does feel like that some elements were a bit rushed, like, the CGI... granted, is not terrible, but it is certainly not the best. Like, that jackal that fights off against Steven/Mark at the end of episode 1 and in episode 2, it almost looks like those weird creatures that you saw from the live-action Scooby-Doo film from 2002. They looked a bit like that. And then, obviously, of course, you know, there are a couple of other bits and pieces like, that could have used some work. But it's not so distracting that it takes you out of the moment. Like, I'm still super invested in what is going on, and I think the fact that from, obviously, of course, you know, the performances from everybody around are super solid. Oscar Isaac is the clear standout here. Love the fact that it's a lot darker and weirder compared to a lot of other mainstream Marvel projects, if that makes sense. The cinematography is just all around really great, and the directors involved, Mohamed Diab, Justin, Aaron Benson, and Justin Moorhead, they're obviously, of course, you know, that talent of people were great. Jeremy Slater, who actually worked on The Exorcist for Fox, and also served as a writer and executive producer on Umbrella Academy Season 1. He serves as the head writer for this, and of course, you know, this was great. And also the music, too, by the composer. I'm forgetting what his name is, but it just sounds great as it captures this really haunting sound to it. But also it's able to mix in a couple of other Egyptian motifs and other things like that. But yeah, overall, Moon Knight was surprisingly solid. Well, not surprisingly solid, because, you know, after looking at the creative team, I'm like, there's no way that this could be bad. But yeah, obviously, of course, you know, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But for what it was, I thought Moon Knight was really solid. So that's what I'm going to give it the patented Siler 9 out of 10. It is really fantastic, and I really think it is worth your time. Especially if you are a fan of Moon Knight, because, stick around to the mid-credit scene of episode 6, because, they bring in a really interesting piece that, us Moon Knight fans have been waiting for since episode 1. So, yeah, that was really great. So, yeah, that about concludes it for now. Tune in next video where I delve into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, expect that video really soon. Yeah. That about does it. I apologize if it seems like I'm going all over the place because, you know, I have no script. But, yeah, as Stephen Graham put it, later, Gators.